Welcome back to Code Breakers. If you've been here before, you already know the deal. We're here to take the topics that usually make your head spin like that girl on The Exorcist and break them down into digestible, actionable pieces. Right now, we are in the thick of tax season, a time that feels incredibly complex and high stakes for any business owner. Today, we're joined by Dia, or Danielle, aka Dia Winder of Winder Wealth Management. It took me so long to get that right because I used to say Winder, but it is Winder, okay? Say it right. Winder Wealth Management to help us simplify the numbers and upgrade the way we think about our money. Dia, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. And don't worry, the winter thing has been my whole life, so you're not alone.
Say it right. Winder. Winder.
Winder.
Okay. All right. So to kick it off, tell us about yourself, Dia. We've known each other for a while. We met at, what was it? I think the Pink Takeover hosted by AK. If you guys don't know AK, you should know AK. But we met at the Pink Takeover. So can you walk us through your career journey? How did you go from the traditional finance world to launching Winder Wealth Management, and what were the key pivots that defined that path?
Thanks for asking and thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and to support, and I love the podcast. So yes, myself. In college, I earned my degree in economics. I've always loved finance and economics. I used to watch it on TV, and so I always knew I wanted to work with money somehow, some way. I got a job right out of college working at a company called Vanguard in the 401k department. And in the 401k department, most of us have that through our employers. And working in that department, the people that I would talk to are people who needed money out of their accounts. You don't really talk to the people who are saving in their 401k. They don't really call. You're talking to the people who need access to the money. They're trying to get it out for emergencies or get it out for whatever reasons. And they didn't understand how the 401k worked. They didn't understand why they couldn't access it. They would get really upset with us. And my department had a very high turnover rate, about 55%. It had a reputation of being a hard department to be in because you're dealing with people who didn't choose to come to Vanguard. Their employer chose to have their accounts with Vanguard. And then also the accounts they have were heavily regulated by the federal government and the IRS and different laws. And so they would think that Vanguard's keeping their money from them, but really it's the rules of the plan. So being in that department for about 3 years and seeing how people didn't save money and hearing these heartbreaking stories of why someone would need money out of their account and couldn't get it, I decided that I wanted to be a financial advisor. And Vanguard had a path where you could become a CFP. So I applied to their program and got into their program, and I went through the CFP journey. And there's a difference from a financial advisor and a CFP. So to be a financial advisor, you can pass the certification. There's not a lot of barriers to entry, but to be a CFP, it's like the cream of the crop. You can't just wake up and be a CFP. You have to have a bachelor's degree. You have to have 3 years of experience. Your company has to sign off on it, and you have to pass a rigorous exam. It's an exam over 6 textbooks, not just one or two, but 6 textbooks. It's cumulative. It was a 10-hour exam over 2 days. And then we didn't get our results for like 6 to 8 weeks, so we had to wait for them. And when I took the exam, it was still Scantron, and I'm not that old, so computers were around and available, but it was still very old school. Um, and so to be a CFP, you have to go through a lot of different steps. And so I went through Vanguard's program, and I decided that I wanted to get the keys to the door and just kind of let everybody run in. Um, and so I became a CFP, and I was doing that at Vanguard. But I went from working with people who needed money out of their accounts to people who had a lot of money in their accounts. I was managing their money. They had $500,000 to $1 million was the level that I was at. So I managed $200 million. I would make the financial decisions for their IRAs, for their accounts. I would do financial plans for them, discuss with them their retirement plan, their financial goals. And so I went from one extreme to the other, and I wasn't quite still talking to regular people, talking to somebody where I can help them. So I started doing on my own financial workshops for free at the library once a year. I would make the materials and put some flyers out there around Las Vegas. And the first workshop I did had 6 people, and the last one I did had like 30 people, which was pretty cool. but I would do that for free as a way to kind of spread the knowledge, and then I would help friends and family. I would be a quote unquote financial coach, and I wouldn't charge anything. And what that experience taught me is that giving it away for free, people don't have any skin in the game. So that I was giving them all this knowledge away that people, millionaires were paying me for, that my friends and family weren't even following. And so I decided that I wanted to kind of monetize and become a company. And so I started Winder Wealth Management as a way to still do financial advice, but also make people have a little skin in the game. Now you got to pay me for my knowledge, and then people are more likely to kind of follow what you say, or at least show up to appointments. And so with Winder Wealth Management, I also do taxes, and so I know it's tax season, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about. But taxes was my second career. I came into that later after as a financial advisor. It just paired well with it, and taxes is its own discipline with its own rules. You can go as deep into taxes as someone wants and then never even learn about like investments or stocks and bonds. And same thing, financial advisor. When I was at Vanguard and I didn't have any tax experience, we would tell people, talk to your tax advisor about this or about that. So you don't find a lot of financial advisors who have both a tax background, and you don't find a tax advisor who has a financial advice background. So I think that's what makes me unique, is I have two different worlds that I bring to the table. And then in my regular 9 to 5, I still have a 9 to 5. I work in corporate finance. So I've dealt with people and their money, and I've also dealt with large companies and their money. I help manage my company's bank account. It's $1 billion company, B with the B. Um, I help manage their bank accounts. I help manage their finances. And so it's similar whether it's a company or a person, but it is a bit different when it's a company. So I also bring that to the table too. So
Okay, so what I heard out of all that is Dia has a lot of knowledge about handling money, whether you're a billionaire or whether you're just getting started. So that means no matter what the in between is, you have somebody who's knowledgeable about it. And if you don't know where to start, because Lord knows I don't know where to start. Dia, I've learned so much with working with Dia. She is my financial advisor and my tax preparer. And I always said, if I was to have someone handling my money, I needed to be somebody who really knows, and not somebody who's trying to mess me over, and somebody who's also going to teach me along the way. And in this journey of mine of entrepreneurship and my personal finances as well, I've learned a lot from Dia over the past few years for sure. So get your idea. I'm gonna say that before we get your idea, okay?
I do
Um,
like to teach. Like, I think it's important too to explain and not just tell someone what to do, but to explain the why behind it. Because if you explain the why, then they make the connection, and then the information sticks longer,
yeah,
hopefully.
there's a lot of people who are like, I don't care about the why, just give me my money. Exactly what you said. It sticks. You know why you have to go through. You know why you have to file taxes when you're a certain type of business, or if you can go and exempt, if you are able to go exempt. All these different things, that different layers of owning a business and being, even just being an individual person. All these tax laws. Dia lets you know there's all these new things that are happening. If you didn't hear about it, she gonna tell you about it. Okay, and if you don't remember, ain't no reason why you don't know about it, because she told you about it already. Okay, was there a specific moment when you kind of answered this already, when you realized that traditional way of handling wealth wasn't serving entrepreneurs? You said you still wasn't dealing with regular people working for Vanguard and working for those billionaires. So that's what made you build Winder Wealth Management. Um, how do you do things differently?
I think my biggest thing is, I'm very thorough. So some of the feedback I used to get when I worked in corporate America, actually I still get this feedback, is that I take too long on some things. I like to research things. I like to explain things. If I don't know the answer, I take my time and try to find the answer. And so I've been given feedback in corporate America that I'm not always the fastest and taking too long on something. And so what makes me different is I'm very thorough. A lot of my clients will say that, and they usually have worked with someone else. Most people I've worked with, I'm not their first tax person or their first financial advisor, but I like to explain the why. Sometimes I kind of go overboard and go too deep into it, but I'm thorough with my research, and I'm thorough with how I explain things. As opposed to just having someone. I want someone not only to trust me, but also I want them to know it as well, because we are all in this together. On some level, I want a person to not need me, because if they don't need me, then I'm doing my job. Usually when people come to me, they have some kind of financial problem and they want my help with fixing it. Sometimes it's filing multiple years of taxes. Sometimes it's help with, not the IRS, or sometimes it's help with, I want to save for a financial goal. I want to know, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? And so I come with different solutions. And on some level, I want to get them to a place where they don't need me anymore. Because I want us all to win. I want us all to do better. I didn't grow up with financial literacy, and most of us don't. It's not a requirement here in the United States. Some people will take an economics course in high school, but there are some countries, from what I've heard, where they make financial literacy a part of their curriculum. And then here in the United States, we don't do that. So a lot of us are just learning on the fly, and learning by making mistakes. And even some of those millionaires that I worked with, some of them, the difference between like them or me was that they just saved a lot of money, or they had a pension and rolled it over. It wasn't even that they had a lot of knowledge. They just saved. So the financial literacy part of it in America itself, it's very lacking. And so I don't want to just do something, but I also want to teach a person how to fish. And hopefully we still continue to fish together. But if they
Hmm.
if they outgrow me, that's okay too. I want them to, I want to see them win, and I hope they want to see me win too. So
Yeah,
my
for
thoroughness, I
sure.
think, is what makes me unique.
It definitely is. I can attest to that. Nothing is missed. These are all
I
good
tell
things.
new clients, if they don't like me asking questions, because sometimes people don't want to just tell you things. They think that they don't need to, or they shouldn't. And so I know for me, I go through A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so I will tell a new person that if you don't want me to know everything, or if you don't want to tell me, then I'm not the right person to work with. Because if I don't know something, and if I don't understand it and I can't explain it, I can't put my name on something to where I'm not confident that it's right or accurate. And so it's hard to work with someone who's either just some people who are like, just do it for me, and I don't want to talk to you. It's hard to work with them, and it's also hard to work with somebody who doesn't want to answer any of my questions.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Dia definitely gonna be all up in your business, but it's good. It's the good. I mean, you want to get your money right, right? You gotta let her know. Let her dig through your bank account a little bit. Just be
And
upfront about it.
you never know what could impact something. So part of it too is, if somebody, for example, this year with taxes, now you can write off charitable contributions. You couldn't do that unless you itemized. So if I know someone is donating to charity, then I can tell them that. But if they don't tell me that they're donating, or they don't think it's a big deal because they're not doing a lot, then I can't tell them about, oh, we got this new tax deduction that you can now write off those
Hmm.
charitable contributions, and you can do that. So a lot
I
of it
still
is to
gotta
try to
find my
benefit.
receipts. I think she was
So
talking to me.
a lot of it is to benefit the business owner, or the person.
She
I'm
trying
not
to
the
get you all of
IRS.
that money, okay? She trying to get you all of that money, every bit that you can get. If you working in your home and you use a portion of it as an office space, you need to measure that thing out, get them numbers to Dia, and she gonna make sure that you make some money off of it, okay?
And take a
Part of some
picture
of the
of it. I
business.
always say take a picture of that home office, because if the IRS comes knocking, they want pictures. They don't care if you move. They want to know that you had it.
Okay. It's so many ways you can make money and you really don't know. That's why I love that she is like all up in your business, because then she'd be like, "Oh, did you know you can do this? Did you know you can do that? Did you know?" Like, she is really thorough. 100%. I can attest to this, okay? This is a testimonial right here right now.
Thanks, love. I appreciate it.
So when you shifted from employee to owner, what was the most complex part of your own business finances that you had to simplify for yourself first?
The most complex part of my business finances. So you hear a lot about business funding. So I knew before I got into it that I wanted to qualify for business loans, business credit cards, business line of credit. and I already have my credit in a good place, but I made sure to have it in its best place that it could be in, so that when I applied for business loans and business credit, that I would be able to acquire it. And it is hard to get funding as a new business owner. A lot of companies want you to have that, want you to be established, and they want you to have some years behind you. And then they also sometimes want you to have a business plan, or they want you to have financial projections. And some of us don't know how to do that. So I knew that for my to get business funding, I had to have the best credit score that I could have available. And so I had my credit score in like 790, 800, something like that. And then I did some financial projections of what I thought I would make. I went to the credit. I took off work. I put on a nice suit. I went to the credit unions and to the banks, and I gave them everything I thought they would want: my W-2s, my tax returns. I had one banker tell me that I've never had somebody be this prepared and have everything without ever having a meeting. Because I inherently knew what they were going to want. So I ended up getting a business loan for 15,000 from my credit union. I ended up getting a business line of credit kind of as a backup for about 2,500. And I ended up getting 3 business credit cards, and across all 3 of those business credit cards, it was roughly like maybe 35,000 or so. Because at the end of it, I had almost 50,000 available to use to kind of start my business. And so I took that money for the loan itself. I kept that money in the bank. I kept that cash in the bank, and I put everything on the business credit cards. And I did that because when you have a business credit card, as long as that institution doesn't report it to the consumer bureau, you can max out that business credit card and buy what you need. And the bill that's going to come due is 3% of the balance. So if I had $10,000 worth of stuff that I put on my credit card, when that bill comes due, I only have to pay $300, 3%. And so I put everything on the business credit card to buy everything, and then I kept my cash, the $15,000 loan that I received. I kept that cash in the bank, and I used that cash to pay on the credit card every month. And so I did that for the first year and a half as I was getting clients, because ideally you want the clients to replenish the cash in the bank from my business loan. And so the first year and a half, um, that's what I was doing. And now that I'm in like year 3, 4, or 5, I don't really need the business debt anymore, but I still have it. And so now my goal is to pay off some of that business debt. And so I would say that when it comes to business finances, is there was a lot of information out there about get business financing, but not talking about what happens in year 5 or 6, where you have business credit cards or you have a business loan, and now it's getting in the way. If I didn't have the business loan and the business credit card, I would have more of my own cash flow that I could use and be able to take money out of the business. I'm still in a place where I am keeping all the money in the business as a way to pay on the business bills, but now it's kind of pay off all the business debt. And so I would say that was something that I didn't I knew about, but when you're in it, it's different, because that's what, the business funding is. You don't want to use your own money and you want to qualify for it. So I did, but now I got to get from underneath it. And luckily, doing taxes, everybody needs their taxes done. The IRS has done a great job at scaring people. So I always have, to some certain extent, tax clients. It's still that you kind of I always have that in the back of my mind, like, okay, how much time do I have left on my business loan? How much time do I have left on my business credit cards? And so I want to get that off my back, and then now just let the cash flow of the business sustain the business.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That was great information. So we're going to go into the mindset shift. For a lot of entrepreneurs, looking at their P&L or tax returns feels like looking at a buggy piece of code, which half the world doesn't understand. It's a, small piece of us that understand what that looks like. And I feel the same for finances. There's a handful of people who really understand finances. You have your fly-by-night tax advisors and tax preparers and people who really don't understand money like that, but they know how to put together a tax refund because of a class that taught them in 24 hours or something like that. So what do you think, or why do you think so many high achievers have a mental block when it comes to their numbers?
I think when I think back to when I was in like middle school and high school and taking a math class, math was always kind of looked at as being nerdy. I remember, like, if you were good at math, you weren't cool. So you had to like secretly be good at math. You couldn't just, you couldn't just be out there saying I'm a tutor for someone. So I do think when it comes to numbers that we are kind of like, as kids, we're not supposed to like them, you know? Um, so I think that comes along with it. So I think there's some childhood, I don't want to call it trauma, but so there's some childhood bias that
Oh,
we
it's
all carry.
traumatizing. Okay.
There's some childhood stuff that we bring into us as adults. And if you're not good at math or English, you can get held back. Here in Nevada, we have to take the efficiency exam or whatever it's called. They hone in on the math part of it. So I do think there's some trauma that comes along with it. And so as adults, when we deal with the numbers, most of us, the personal experience we have is dealing with bank accounts and either not having enough to pay bills or not having enough for this or for that. And so sometimes we're in survivor mode and living paycheck to paycheck. Or other times we make financial mistakes and we don't, we sometimes feel ashamed about it. There's an emotional part about money that you have to also talk about, because it's not separate. The numbers are the numbers, yes, but there's always some kind of bias that comes along with it, our perceptions and how we grew up. And so when it comes to looking at the even making a profit and loss statement, most of us don't know how to do it, and then we're embarrassed to ask for help. And even if we do hire a bookkeeper, so I do bookkeeping, for example, sometimes when I go over it with my clients, they're like a deer in the headlights. They don't always know what I'm talking about. They don't really have any questions. And I like to think that I'm pretty good at explaining things, but it's just not always easy to make that connection. And I think that it takes time and repetition. So I've been dealing with numbers and learning about finance ever since college. I went to college in 2005 and graduated 2010 with an economics degree. And so now it's 2026. So it's been a long time of looking at finances and dealing with finances. And there's even still new stuff that's out there. And some of it takes repetition. And I think it helps to think of some of these financial statements as your personal account. So like with the profit and loss statement, I tell people to kind of think about that as their bank statement. When you look at your bank statement, if we look at it, it has in there all the money that came into the account and all the money that went out of the account. You spent your money on bills and your paycheck went into the account. The profit and loss statement is the same way. It has all the money that went into the business. That's the income that you make. And then it has all the money that went out of the business. Those are your expenses. And the money that went in minus your expenses is your bottom line number. If it's a positive number, it's profit. If it's a negative number, it's a loss. And you can think of that as your bank account. If you overdraft your bank account and it goes negative, it means you spent more than you went than what went into it. Same thing with your profit and loss statement. If that number at the bottom is negative, it means you spent more than what you earned. And that can be important because you don't want to do that too long. If you do that too long, you can file bankruptcy. If you do that and you're doing it strategically, it can kind of sometimes be a strategy where you have a loss as a way to offset income in other places. Sometimes that's a tax strategy that business owners will use. The other one is the balance sheet. That's, I think, the most confusing type of a financial statement for a lot of us, because there's not like another personal statement or comparison that I have. The profit and loss statement I can compare to the bank statement, but a balance sheet is like a snapshot in time of how much are you worth on paper. And a lot of us don't think about that. We're either growing wealth or we have so many different accounts where we don't think of it all as one thing. But the balance sheet is a list of everything you own, your bank account, your car, if you have any valuables. So a balance sheet lists everything the business owns. And then it also lists everything the business owes. So any debt that someone owes, you can think of your personal wise, a student loan, credit card, mortgage. For the business side, it would be if they owned a business credit card, a business loan, if they had a building and they had a mortgage on that building. So the other part of the balance sheet is what the business owes. And then the third part of the balance sheet is called the equity. That's the most confusing part. And even some accountants need reminders, and we Google stuff to try to remember what it is. But the equity part is the assets minus your liabilities equals your net worth. If that number is positive, it means you're worth more than, you're worth more than what you owe. If that number is negative, it means you owe more than what you're worth. and you want that number to be positive. You want to have more assets than liabilities if you can.
Great information. Great information. So the shift, what is the biggest mindset shift an entrepreneur needs to make to move from surviving tax season to building long-term wealth?
I just want
I'm
everybody to
sorry.
know who's listening that these are not scripted answers. She didn't give me the questions up front or anything. But a part of me, I like it too, because then I don't know what you're going to ask, so I don't know what I'm going to say. Versus, if I did have the questions, I may have.
Like I gotta, this is that, this is the deal that's like, I want to be prepared, and this girl did not let me be prepared for nothing.
I'm a planner. I'm a planner.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, repeat the question. Okay, repeat that last one.
What's the biggest mindset shift an entrepreneur needs to make moves from surviving tax season to building long-term wealth?
The biggest mindset shift, I would say, is when we are not entrepreneurs and we think of tax season, we think about getting all of our tax documents together and filing to get the IRS off our back. We're filing for that refund, or we're filing just because we know we're supposed to do it. So as a regular non-entrepreneur, tax season is all about just getting the documents and filing and getting it done. As an entrepreneur, you want to think more of tax planning, because tax filing and tax preparation is reactive. You already have all your documents. There's not much you can do to change the outcome. But tax planning, that's more proactive. As an entrepreneur, you have to do tax planning throughout the year so that when it's time to file, you don't have a big surprise. As an entrepreneur, no one is paying taxes for you. When you have a W-2, your employer takes taxes out of your paycheck unless you go exempt, and they're constantly sending the IRS money on your behalf throughout the whole year. But as an entrepreneur, no one is doing that. You're supposed to do that yourself. You're supposed to file quarterly tax payments once every 3 months. And most of us don't know that, or we don't know how to do that. Even if we know about it, we don't know how. And so tax planning is a big part that has to start happening. And so it changes from thinking about taxes once a year to now thinking about taxes at least 4 times a year when those quarterly tax payments are due. But I think about taxes monthly, because you want to do your bookkeeping monthly. The bookkeeping is how you create your profit and loss statement or your balance sheet. So every month, entrepreneurs should be reviewing their bank statements, their bank accounts, and seeing what they're spending and seeing how much they made. And if they're doing that every single month, then you have an idea of what your taxes could be, because the self-employment tax is a flat number. It's 15.3% of your profit. So if you have a profit, roughly 15.3% is going to be due at tax time. And there's some deductions that business owners have, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but just for the sake of the conversation, 15.3% is a self-employment tax. So if you're doing your bookkeeping every single month and you have a profit, then every month you can monitor that number and you can see, how much am I going to owe in taxes. Doing tax planning and thinking about taxes more often is the mind shift. And then not think of it so negative. Taxes are not as negative as we think. I mean, the other part of taxes, yes, we pay them, but they pay for the libraries, they pay for the roads, they pay for, the public, the parks. If we didn't have taxes, then we wouldn't have some of these public services that we have. And of course, they also pay, some of the salaries of people you might not like, but don't think about that part. If you like to go to the library, if you have kids that you take to the library, those are our tax dollars. If you were ever in school and you went on a trip and you had to go downtown and you visited, you visited like the local government, those are our tax dollars. When we see people, when a city here in Las Vegas, we have we build different things. We have the Raider Stadium, where we have the construction where they're improving roads. Like, those are all of our tax dollars. So taxes, the other side of it is, it's a way to kind of make sure that we have the things that we want.
Mhm.
So taxes is not all bad.
Well, you led us right into the next question. So you obviously didn't need this script ahead of time. As you've scaled your firm, what is one negative thought or belief about financial security that you were finally happy to leave behind?
I think the negative thought I would say is the growing part of it, getting clients and making revenue. For me, when I first started out, I had no idea how to get clients. I had no idea if I was going to make any money. That's one reason why I went and did so much research about business funding and I didn't just, research it, but I knew I had a plan. I was getting a business loan specifically that would cover the business credit card. And I knew that that business loan amount would cover me for a year and a half. So I had a whole year and a half to get my business off the ground. And if I wasn't able to do that, then I knew I had a W 2 job I could fall back on. I would just pay off everything with my W 2. And it would take time, but at least I knew I could do it. Um, so I knew that I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know how I was going to be successful and if I would be successful. So I would say that the the thing that was surprising that I've had to I guess not be so afraid of is I am in a business to try to make money. So like last year I made the most money I ever made and I'm like, well, how did that happen? Like I didn't make enough to be able to leave my 9 to 5, but I made enough to where like, you know what, I'm sticking with it. Like I'm doing it. I'm on my way. I don't have to give up. And so there's a little bit of fear because the more money you make, the busier you get. And then you have to eventually take that leap to leave that W 2 job, to leave that 9 to 5 because it gets in the way. With my
Mm-hmm.
current business, I will say my 9 to 5 gets in the way because it's a regular job, but after work, sometimes I'm tired and I don't want to do things. Or now I'm working also on the weekends, so I don't really have a day off because I do my 9 to 5 during the week and I do my entrepreneur job on the weekends. So there's not really a day off, spending time with my family. Everybody complains that I don't spend enough time with them. And I'm like, well, who's getting my time then? Because I'm not getting it. Um, I don't know
It's
who's
that
getting my time.
entrepreneurship grind. That's what it is, the grind of being an entrepreneur.
Right. So not so the making the money part is the thing I would say that the negative thought that I had to kind of change was that I like intentionally and purposefully saying like, yes, I am going to make money and I'm going to make more than I made last year. And like in December, I worked on a financial budget for this year. Okay, how much do I want to make and how many clients do I have and how much do each of them pay? So, okay, now how many new clients do I have to get? Because there is always some clients who leave. And so putting together some real numbers now that I have a couple of years of data, putting together
Yeah.
a financial projection for the company. I've done that for myself for my own budget, right? I'll budget my paycheck. I know what my mortgage payment is. I know what my electricity bill is. I know I got to pay my cell phone bill. But now doing that same thing for my company, that's something that's new because now I actually have some data and understanding like, okay, breaking down the numbers. How much money do I make per client, and how many clients do I think I will lose based on how many I lost before? And then what number do I want to get to by the end of the year, and how can I get there? So
You making me take notes during this
well, so that's what I want to. I'm here to teach.
you making me take notes and I'm supposed to be interviewing you. But these are, we don't get together enough. Eventually I plan on being able to be like, okay, Dia, I need you for more than just my taxes. I need you for my bookkeeping. And I've made some strides this year already, and we only in January towards getting Dia in my pocket a little bit more. So
You opened the business checking account. I remember when we did our annual review, and you were like, "I opened the business checking account." I did my little happy dance. I was, I'm
yeah.
excited.
Yeah, and I've made money already in this year. And so, just for me, I know about like creating performer reports for internal workflows and making sure that certain finance reports that we're going over to look at. And these are things that I learned just before I ever met you in order to like make sure these are reports you have to go over with your team. Like, and then you need to know, like you said, what you're spending money on, what's coming into the business, what's coming out to the business. But also being in business development and being a marketer, we also need to know how many clients do we need to get this month in order to make sure that we are profitable and making sure that we get a certain commission or whatever your role is. So I've learned these things without even having someone like you in my life. And then I meet you, and then we're talking all these things, and all the dots start to connect, and it's like, oh, like, oh.
Like this is
So
something we do in our real lives, not just at
yeah,
work.
uh-huh. Yeah. So you making me take some additional notes that I'm gonna leave this meeting with. I hope all of you guys out there watching are taking notes too, because she's dropping some gems right now. Even if you feel like you're not ready to take that next step to pay somebody else, you can start preparing. As Dia told you, she prepared for this. She prepared for this, so you prepare to deal with her.
You are hilarious. I love it.
All right, so in finance, your network is your net worth. I absolutely love that saying. It goes around the entrepreneur community a lot. So it's a very common phrase. How has your approach to building and maintaining your professional network evolved since becoming an entrepreneur?
This, this is where I struggle. The networking is not my thing. I was working with Miss Franisha Hayes about the networking. It's my little plug for her. She was helping me with the marketing coaching and just, talking to people. Networking is my least favorite thing to do because I feel like you have to be authentic, but then on some level you want people to like utilize your services. So I just struggle with it. I want to build real connections. And even in my personal life, just real connections, sustainable connections are just not easy for me. I'm neurodivergent, so I'm on the spectrum. And so just social interactions and maintaining social relationships has always been hard anyway. So my networking needs some improvement. That's all I'm going to say.
Meanwhile, I think that you've been doing though a great job because we have worked together, and I remember also having a phone call with you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm here at this place, and I met these many people. I didn't just sit in my corner up against the wall. I met these many people, and then after that, I think you did follow up with those people as well, and that turned into some business from a few of them. So I think you've
That is
gotten
true.
better. I think you've gotten better. We
When I
also
was
had
talking to you more, I did that same. It was the Wedding MBA conference. I did that in 2024, and I had you as on speed dial. But I did that same conference this year, 2025, and it did not go that well. I stayed in the corner, and I was so disappointed in myself. I was like, man, I need Miss Franisha Hayes because I went to the same event, but it was not the same outcome. I didn't really do much talking to people. I brought some
so we
tax
had some
returns and worked on
conversations.
taxes.
Not you brought work to the,
That was my excuse. Like, I need to catch up on these tax returns.
that
But
was your
then I was
excuse for not getting out there. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So we
terrible.
had conversations about mindset set shifts too, about, shifting from the negative talk about ourselves, and talking positive about ourselves, and why we need to be like our why. Why are we doing this? Why are we putting ourselves out there and all that? So I think honestly, this conversation today is just a reminder for you that like you are the shiznit, and you
Oh,
know what you're doing,
thank
and
you.
like you just, like you said, the networking aspect, you are a numbers person. You prefer to be talking to numbers and not people, but these people is gonna grow your numbers.
It's just the type of people. It's just this. I like talking to like you're easy to talk to. I like talking to people who see me for who I am and who value me. Some people are just hard to talk to. Life is hard sometimes, and being an adult is hard, and you got to deal with everybody.
Being an adult is hella ghetto. That's the sound man.
If I could choose who I interact with, then it would be easier with the networking, and
Yeah.
it's just and I've so some of the networking I've done, like I've went out on on lunch, like I went to lunch with a couple of people, and they were all men, and so they like they how you get to the register, it's like, hey, you want to pay, and I always offer to pay because I don't know, I just don't want them to think that it's more than what it is. But then I get mad when they let me pay. I'll be like, in my mind I'm like, no, you should pay, you the man. But it's the networking, the lunch or whatever. So I've done it like 3 or 4 times where I've gone networking with these men and they let me pay, and I just don't like it. And my daughter was like, well, then don't offer to pay. But I'm like, but I don't want them to think it's a date. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Tell them to pay for themselves.
That's what I need to start saying. We're just going to go Dutch.
Yep, go Dutch, because we are here on lunch.
Uh,
Hmm.
I don't know why that bothers me, but it does. With the
Coming
with when
from
somebody lets me pay.
chivalry's dead. All right. If we treat a business like a piece of software, like bookkeeping is the documentation, how can a business owner break down their messy receipts and spreadsheets into a system that actually makes sense? So, you like doing this.
There's there's software out there now that helps to read the receipts because there's always doing it by hand. That's what I do is I do it by hand. Clients will give me receipts in a bag sometimes, or they'll give me receipts in a folder. So I do it
Not
by
the
hand.
bag.
I had a client one time give me a baggie full of receipts, a lunch bag, the big Ziploc bag, and it was like 134 receipts in there. Yes, and I put them all in my spreadsheet, typed them all in there manually. But there are software now where it will read the receipt and categorize it for you. I know that some clients I've had they use something called Shoebox. I've seen QuickBooks, Wave. So there's different bookkeeping software now where it allows you to take a picture of the receipt and it will total it for you. The problem with those though is you do have to pay their fee, and once you're no longer paying for it, you export the data, but you don't, it's their software. So I like to take pictures of all of my receipts as a business owner, especially because ink fades. And if the IRS ever comes knocking, they don't come knocking 1 year later. It's normally 4 or 5 years later where it's hard to find the receipt or it's hard to remember what I bought. So I take pictures of all of my receipts and I do my bookkeeping in Google Sheets. I also, when I do bookkeeping for clients, I do it in Google Sheets. But I do know some clients who use Wave and QuickBooks and they like it. I think the biggest thing is just having bookkeeping and doing it regularly. That's the biggest hurdle that a lot of entrepreneurs will have. They scramble at the end of the year to do it because they know they have to, but doing it throughout the year is the biggest hurdle and the habit that has to be formed. So with turning your receipts into software, I take pictures of mine, but the it's doing the bookkeeping, connecting your business bank accounts to either a software system like QuickBooks, Wave, Zero, or if you like to use Excel, I download my bank information, credit card information as a CSV file, and then I copy and paste it into my template that I have that I also use with clients, and I save those templates, and then I will convert them into a PDF so that I have a nice little PDF report of the information.
And this is why, for me, why I need to be able to afford someone like you because it's already a lot in my day to day, putting together marketing strategies, actually doing the work, building out websites, creating graphics. I'm doing all of the things on top of doing this Code Breakers podcast now. Uh, I have so many other things that I need to be doing and want to be creating. And bookkeeping is like very bottom of my list. Doing, figuring out what, and it shouldn't be, but this is why we as business owners who are busy running our business, we need to give it to you so you can help us in our business. So,
Yeah, so the bookkeeping I charge $50 per account per month, which is really, really cheap. Like if you go, I don't want to say cheap, it's very affordable. If somebody goes out there and tries to hire a bookkeeper, I don't know any bookkeepers who charge what I charge. I try to be very affordable. And I,
y'all
I
hear
will say
that?
that
$50 per month
per account per month. So if you have
per
one
account.
business checking account, it's $50 for that month, $600 for the year.
You're going to spend $50 on that fast food meal that you want every time.
So true.
Hire her.
But the bookkeeping is the backbone of the business because if someone's books are not done, then they won't be able to tell you how much money they made. And if somebody wants to get a business loan, or if you want to get a grant, or if someone wants to take their business from being a small entrepreneur to like a corporation, knowing the numbers is a big deal because anybody who invests in you wants to know, are they going to get their money back? So the bookkeeping tells the business owner their numbers. And if you don't know your numbers, then people aren't going to want to give you money. So
Mhm.
it's also, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know if you need to make improvements somewhere. For me, I spend a lot of money on software because I work in taxes and financial services, and so I'm constantly monitoring my software costs. And I also spend money on contractors because I get help sometimes, during tax season. So, but if I wasn't doing my bookkeeping, if I didn't know where my biggest expenses were, I wouldn't know where to cut cost. I also spend a lot of money on the interest that I pay on my business loan and my business credit card. That's how I knew that this year my goal was to pay down or pay off those things. And I did pay off my business line of credit last year, which I'm super excited about. And I'm a couple months away from paying off my business loan. So, but if I didn't do my bookkeeping, I wouldn't know what areas do I spend the most money on. And I also wouldn't know, are there some months that I make more money than, other months? Like, is my business seasonal? So by doing my books on a regular basis, I know that if I'm, like for me, tax season, March and April, those are the months, my highest revenue months. So I know that those 2 months I need to not only, um, be marketing myself, but also put some of that money to the side so that when it's no longer tax season, like when it's November, December, those are my lowest revenue months. So I need to have a little bit of cash from when I was at my high season, March and April, in order to pay my bills in November and December. Because the bills don't go away just because it's a low revenue
Yeah,
month.
yeah, for sure. All right. What is the most crucial financial system or tool for time management, tax planning, or payroll that you implemented in the last year that changed the game for you?
Um, So some of those I don't need in my business. So I don't need, for example, a payroll system. I just recently started using a payroll system. So for those who don't know, when you're a business owner and you need help, you can either hire a contractor or you can hire an employee. A lot of people will hire a contractor because it's the most affordable way. You just pay them. You don't have to pay any unemployment insurance. You don't have to pay any payroll taxes, all on the responsibility of the contractor. A part of the problem with that is there's rules that we have to go by. The Department of Labor has set up rules of who's a contractor and who can be an employee. If you hire somebody and you have control over their schedule, they should be an employee. If you hire someone and you give them the tools that they need to do their job, then they should be an employee. If you hire someone and the more structure and control you have over that person in their kind of work life, then they're more of an employee, not really a contractor. So this year for 2020, 2026, I had an honest conversation with myself that the contractors that I had, they're not really contractors because I give them all the software that they use. I give them all the tools that they use. They're really more employees. So I went through the steps of setting up my business as an employer. And there are certain steps, like on the state level, you have to register with your state because you have to pay into your state unemployment insurance. That's a requirement. So here in Nevada, 3% of what I pay each person, I have to pay into the Nevada Unemployment Fund. Also, you have to have workman's comp. That's a requirement when you have employees. That's a different set of insurance. Most business owners will have liability insurance because we know if we get sued, we don't want someone to come after us. But when you have employees, you now also have to have workman's comp. Even if they're remote employees, if they get hurt, you have to be able to, you pay that out. And then also, when it comes to payroll tax, I have to pay half of the payroll tax and the employee pays the other half. And so there's additional costs when you have an employee versus a contractor. That's why a lot of companies will not do employees; they will only do contractors. But this year, I've converted all of my contractors into employees because it was the right thing to do and to get compliant. And so I'm using QuickBooks payroll system, and so I'm learning it and experiencing it for the first time. I do know some people who use other payroll software like Rippling or Zero, Paychecks, ADP. So I have some clients who have used their software before. Um, it's all about the customer service. ADP is kind of the Cadillacs of the industry. They're a little bit more expensive